Welcome to the Inside the Box podcast. I'm your host, Hans Zappin, and this week we were thrilled to be joined over the phone with US Senator Johnny Isakson here from our home state of Georgia. We had a national security conversation, which was interesting. He is the chair of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, so he's obviously very involved in and informed in that area. We talk Iran, North Korea, the troop levels in Iraq. He actually just got back from a trip to Iraq, so I got a chance to ask him a little bit about that and some other things. So it was a great conversation, and I think you'll enjoy it. Here it is. All righty. Well, Senator, thank you for joining us here on the show today. I wanted to jump right into it, and I understand you just got back from a trip to Iraq.
That's correct. We were over in Iraq for 4.5 days.
Okay. How was it? What's the state of the mission there? What's the morale with the troops right
well, the
now?
morale. First of all, it's the fourth time I've been to Iraq since the hostilities began, and I was there twice during hostilities early on. I was there during the implementation of the surge when we kind of took the victory from Saddam Hussein and captured him, and then I was back 2 weeks ago to look and see what our progress is. The progress has been good. Baghdad was obviously a heavily damaged city because of the invasion and the surge, and a lot of that's been repaired. It's still obviously a country that's greatly affected by conflict and by war, but the streets were relatively peaceful, and there was some springing up of new businesses. A lot more to come are necessary, but some beginning to get to business. And so all in all, it was a successful trip. We wanted to especially see the Georgia troops that were there. There were a lot of them there. In fact,
Sure.
I was really honored that one of the pilots of the C-17 that picked us up in southern Iraq and flew us to northern Iraq was one of my nominees to the United States Air Force Academy when he went through high school. So I had a personal pilot that I got in the Air Force Academy to take me around Iraq for a little while, and that was a lot of fun.
That's great. That's great. What parallels, if any, do you draw between Iraq and sort of the current state of affairs with Iran right now?
Well, Iran is the problem in the Middle East, and they always have been the problem, but they're the big problem now. They're the most rambunctious, most nefarious actor in the region, and our intelligence sources are on high alert to follow whatever they do, any changes they might make in their deployment of manpower and stuff like that. The fact that they're taking and withdrawing from the agreement that we withdrew from in terms of the missile agreement, and then they're using that as a rattling sword to kind of justify them doing stuff militarily. It's just not just the same old. It's the 10th chapter in the 40th verse, but it's the same thing. It's a terrorist-based country that holds its people hostage and suppresses their economic growth and development and their education, and keeps them at bay while they run roughshod over their neighbors and use it to exploit the natural assets of the region, which is primarily oil and gas. So it's the bad actor, Iran, messing in everybody else's backyard and causing instability that causes us a lot of problems.
Are there lessons learned that you can think of as tensions do escalate with Iran that we can avoid based off of our history with the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq?
Well, I think the things to remember are that every time we drew a line in the sand and then we enforced it, and Iraq was one of those, we came out a lot better than times we threatened them and didn't do it. And Obama did that one time. It just was a disaster because it ended up in our Syria policy, which cost us a lot of lives in the Middle East, a lot of future opportunities for the United States of America, and the people of Syria lost the country, basically. And the only person who came out of it a winner was Assad, who's probably one of the sorriest human beings that ever walked on the face of this earth. So it's a total disaster when you're not engaged, but when you are engaged, you got to walk softly, but you got to carry a big stick, and that's what makes walking softly work. So,
well,
I was doing the walking softly part when I was there. I wasn't doing the heavy hitting.
Sure. Well, and there was news made recently about a contingency plan, if you will, about deploying troops to Iran in the event of an attack on American forces or an acceleration of work on nuclear weapons. What was your reaction to that plan, and do you have confidence in John Bolton's advice to the president as it relates to plans with Iran?
Well, let me take those one at a time. I think anybody who doesn't understand that 24/7 every day we're playing psychological warfare with our enemies and our would-be enemies, anything we show in terms of a planning for a deployment or talking about a deployment or talking about possibilities is designed as much to keep the other side off balance as it is to tell what our plans are. In fact, we generally don't publish our plans. Anything you might read that's published probably is not something that we put out in the first place. So
Sure.
the most important thing is we're always prepared and always trying to be ready and always trying to be able to use the big stick when we have to. So that's the most important thing people can recognize. We don't wantonly use our power. We got the best aircraft in the world in the F-22, got the best Navy in the world, got the best Marine Corps in the world, got the best of everything, and they're ready to go, and they're trained and they're ready. But we only want to use them if we have to, and if we use them, we want to use them to the full extent of their effectiveness.
Understood. And your confidence in National Security Advisor John Bolton's ability to give good advice to the president?
I've agreed with John Bolton a lot of times, and I haven't agreed with him a lot of times.
Sure.
But it's his job to give the advice, and that's the person the president has the confidence in. So I think that's the way it works in terms of not only diplomacy but the military as well.
Okay. So last question on the Middle East. So we've seen some news recently with President Carter offering his help as it relates to North Korea, and Secretary Kerry has been involved in Iran and some of the planning there. What role do you see prior elected officials or just leaders in the United States playing? What role could they play, or what role should they be playing?
Well, I've got a contemporary example to give you to that question.
Okay.
It's the best answer I could possibly think of, an exemplary of what I would have told you had I not been asked the question. And that is that yesterday I was privileged to be able to go attend the funeral services for Dick Lugar in Indianapolis, Indiana. Flew out with the Vice President of the United States, and on the airplane was Sam Nunn, a senator from Georgia, probably the best-known not Secretary of Defense, but Defense Armed Services Committee chairman we ever had. Great Georgian, great support of our military, and he was talking about President Trump having called him before he made his final decisions on what his plans were going to be recently on some of the responses to some of the things we were hearing. So there's a Georgia senator of great repute and great knowledge, who's respected by everyone, that was called on by President Trump for advice just in the consulting period of time now leading up to the thing we will ultimately do in the Middle East. So I think that's a good example that all presidents look for good advice from all former presidents, because that's the best place to get it.
Sure, and I watched your tribute to Dick Lugar on the Senate floor last night. I could tell he played an important role in your life, and as
he was a special guy for our country. Dick Lugar is one of the finest public servants I've ever known.
Absolutely. I want to ask you just a little bit about your role as chair of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. What type of work are you involved in right now? What kind of updates can you give us?
Well, it's a timely question because we're having our committee hearing today. We just finished a committee hearing where we're hearing on the newly appointed number 2 person, Mr. Byrne, at the VA, which will be the operational execution guy for Senator Wilkie and be his right arm. So that's the last of the major appointments that need to be confirmed, and I think he will be confirmed. So we'll be in a full complement of leadership at the VA. All good people that we've vetted well, and that after a few missteps along the way that by the committee, we slipped when we should have slid, so to speak. We've done a great job, got the right people in place, and got some good Americans representing the veterans of our country who've fought and sacrificed for us. So I'm proud of that.
What areas do you feel that Congress needs to be stepping up more and helping you with in that capacity?
Well, mainly I have to give a lot of thanks to John Tester, who's my ranking member on the committee, and we had a number of votes last year on veterans benefits. All of them were 14-1 votes. We only had one dissenting vote the whole year on our policy, and we revamped military benefits and VA benefits for our soldiers in a big way. New GI Bill, for example, just a start, and all the other things that we did there. The access standards and the new non-VA doctor access that are going into effect on the 6th of June is going to be a huge improvement for our veterans, and also an improvement in terms of the throughput and the amount of people that will have access to care through the private sector that wouldn't have had it before had we not done it. So we've done a lot of things to make access to quality care easier for a veteran, to follow up on that access to be well and thorough, and the accountability on the expenditure of of tax dollars on private sector treatment when that's the byproduct is all important thing for us to have. So I think we're in the process of watching the implementation and the rollout and the completely satisfactory service the VA is going to be given for years to come.
Okay. I want to ask you one more question, sort of in that national security realm. We're seeing an escalation of, for lack of a better term, these trade wars going on. What impact, if any, do these types of disputes have on our national security?
Well, I think David Perdue said it well. The biggest threat to our national security is our national debt. And the more we can lower our national debt, the more secure we're going to be. And having a balanced trade policy is the first way you begin to have a lowering of the federal debt. And I'm looking forward to that day coming soon.
Sure.
We're not doing it yet, but we're trying to move in that direction and do so. So I think that the current tariff battle that's being talked about is a risky game. You've got a master of negotiation with the football right now, and that's President Trump. And I have to give him his credit. He's really used the threat of tariffs more than tariffs themselves to actually improve our trade relations in a number of areas, primarily the Korean Peninsula and the old NAFTA agreement, which is now called the MCA. But that's going to only last so long. You can't always just one up the other side with another tariff and get them to capitulate and whip into shape. Eventually, they're going to confront you. And when they put a tariff on us, it's going to hurt our Georgia farmers and our ag business big time, because that's the number one place that tariffs would hurt, and that's the number one thing we have going through the ports of Savannah from Georgia. So pecans, peanuts, poultry, pine trees, all those types of things going out of the port. Heavy bulk cargo, and Savannah is a great port, and that's a great income producer for our country and a great national security for our country as well.
Do you worry at all that these trade disputes will affect our ability to work with allies in accumulating intelligence, or if, God forbid, we need to call on an ally for troops out on the battlefield, that could put some of this in jeopardy?
Well,